Welcome to the Historypedia channel. My name is Peter and today I'm going to tell you about the Carthaginian Empire. It was a major power in the Western Mediterranean before the rise of the Roman Empire. Carthage was a powerful city-state located in North Africa, near modern-day Tunisia. The city was founded by Phoenician colonizers in the 9th century BC, and it quickly grew into a major center of trade and commerce in the Mediterranean region. The Carthaginian Empire emerged in the 6th century BC, and it rapidly expanded its influence and territory through a combination of military conquest and trade agreements. The Carthaginians controlled a vast network of ports and trade routes throughout the Mediterranean, and they became known for their skill in shipbuilding and navigation. One of the most famous conflicts in Carthaginian history was the series of wars with Rome known as the Punic Wars. These wars began in 264 BC and lasted for over a century, with both sides engaging in brutal battles on land and sea. Hannibal, one of Carthage's most famous generals, famously crossed the Alps with an army of elephants to attack Rome, but ultimately Carthage was defeated in the Third Punic War in 146 BC. After its defeat, Carthage was largely destroyed by the Romans, and the city's former territory became a Roman province. However, the legacy of Carthage continued to influence the Mediterranean world for centuries to come, particularly in terms of trade, culture, and language. Carthage first established a presence in the Iberian Peninsula in the 5th century BC. They initially established trading posts along the coast, but eventually began to expand their territory through a series of conquests. The first major Carthaginian conquest in Iberia was led by Hamilcar Barca in 237 BC, who established a base at Cartagena and began to expand inland. Hamilcar's son-in-law, Hasdrubal, continued the expansion and founded the city of Nova Carthago as the capital of Carthaginian Iberia. However, the most famous Carthaginian general in Iberia was Hannibal, who took command of the Carthaginian forces in 221 BC. Hannibal was an exceptional military commander and led a number of successful campaigns in Iberia, including the capture of Saguntum, a Roman ally, which triggered the Second Punic War. But before that, the First Punic War started due to a dispute between the two powerful Mediterranean city-states of Rome and Carthage over control of the island of Sicily. At the time, Sicily was a wealthy and strategically important island, and both Rome and Carthage saw it as a valuable prize. The conflict began when Rome intervened in a dispute between two Sicilian cities and took control of the island's eastern half, which had been under the control of Carthage. Carthage responded by sending an army to Sicily to regain control of the island. This led to a series of battles between the Carthaginian and Roman forces, with both sides winning and losing various engagements. The war escalated when Rome built a large fleet to challenge Carthaginian naval dominance in the western Mediterranean. The Romans had no prior experience in naval warfare, but they managed to build a powerful navy and win a series of naval battles against the Carthaginians. After 23 years of fighting, the war finally ended with the defeat of Carthage. The city was forced to cede Sicily to Rome and pay a large indemnity to cover the cost of the war. The First Punic War was significant for both Rome and Carthage. Hannibal was one of Carthage's most famous and skilled generals, and he is remembered for his daring and unconventional tactics. In 218 BC, Hannibal led an army of around 40,000 men, including elephants, across the Alps from Spain into Italy. This was an incredible feat, as the journey through the treacherous mountains was incredibly difficult, and many of Hannibal's men and animals died along the way. However, Hannibal's invasion of Italy caught the Romans off guard and allowed him to win a series of victories against the Roman army. Despite his initial success, Hannibal was unable to capture Rome itself, and he was eventually forced to retreat back to Carthage to defend his homeland against a Roman invasion. The Roman general Scipio Africanus led the invasion, and he won a decisive victory against the Carthaginians at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. The Second Punic War had significant consequences for both Rome and Carthage. For Rome, the war solidified its position as the dominant power in the Mediterranean, and it marked the beginning of its imperial expansion. For Carthage, the war was devastating, as it lost its territories in Spain and was forced to pay a large indemnity to Rome. After the war, Rome continued to exert its influence over the Mediterranean world, while Carthage struggled to regain its former power. Tensions between Rome and Carthage eventually boiled over into the Third Punic War, which resulted in the complete destruction of Carthage in 146 BC. The Third Punic War was the final conflict between Rome and Carthage, and it resulted in the complete destruction of the city of Carthage. The war was sparked by a dispute between Carthage and its neighboring Numidian kingdom, which was allied with Rome. In 149 BC, the Numidian king Marsinisa launched an attack on Carthaginian lands, which Carthage saw as a violation of its sovereignty. Carthage appealed to Rome for help, but the Roman Senate saw an opportunity to eliminate its old enemy once and for all. The Roman consul, Publius Cornelius Scipio Aemilianus, was dispatched to North Africa with a large army, and he laid siege to Carthage. The siege of Carthage was long and brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses. However, the Roman army eventually breached the city's defenses and overran the city. The Romans then proceeded to raze Carthage to the ground, burning its buildings and selling its inhabitants into slavery. The destruction of Carthage was a significant event in ancient history, as it marked the end of one of the great powers of the Mediterranean world. It also had significant consequences for Rome, as the city's destruction was seen as a warning of the dangers of imperial expansion and the need for restraint. In the aftermath of the Third Punic War, Rome continued to expand its territories across the Mediterranean, but it also faced new challenges from other powers, including Greece and the Seleucid Empire. However, the destruction of Carthage ensured that Rome remained the dominant power in the Mediterranean world for centuries to come. After the destruction of Carthage in the Third Punic War, the Carthaginian Empire ceased to exist as a political entity. The surviving Carthaginians were sold into slavery, and the city was reduced to ruins. The area around Carthage was then incorporated into the Roman province of Africa, which became an important center of Roman power in the region. The Romans built new cities and towns in the area, and the region became an important source of agricultural goods, such as grain and olive oil. Some Carthaginians managed to escape the destruction of their city and found refuge in other parts of the Mediterranean world, including Spain, Sicily, and North Africa. These Carthaginians attempted to maintain their cultural identity and traditions, but they were gradually assimilated into the cultures of the regions where they lived. Despite the destruction of Carthage, the legacy of the Carthaginian Empire continued to have an impact on the Mediterranean world. Carthaginian influence could be seen in the cultures and traditions of the regions that had been part of the empire, and the memory of Carthage continued to inspire poets, historians, and other writers throughout the ancient world. The influence of Carthaginian culture on Europe is a subject of debate among historians and scholars, as much of the written and material evidence of Carthaginian culture has been lost over time. However, there are a few areas where Carthaginian culture is believed to have had an impact on Europe. One of the most significant areas of influence was in trade and commerce. Carthage was a major trading power in the ancient world, and its merchants and traders had contacts throughout the Mediterranean region and beyond. Carthaginian merchants were known for their skill in navigation and their ability to establish trade routes across long distances. The Carthaginian use of coins as currency was also influential and contributed to the development of a monetary economy in Europe. Carthaginian art and architecture also had an impact on Europe. The Carthaginians were skilled craftsmen and produced a wide range of objects, including pottery, jewelry, and metalwork. The city's architecture was also notable, with large public buildings, temples, and palaces. Some aspects of Carthaginian art and architecture can be seen in the art and architecture of ancient Greece and Rome, which were heavily influenced by Carthaginian culture. Another area where Carthaginian culture had an impact on Europe was in religion. The Carthaginians worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, many of whom were similar to the deities worshipped by the ancient Greeks and Romans. Some elements of Carthaginian religious practices, such as animal sacrifice, were also adopted by other cultures in the Mediterranean world. Overall, while the influence of Carthaginian culture on Europe may not be as well documented as other ancient cultures, it is clear that Carthage played an important role in the development of trade, art, architecture, and religion in the Mediterranean world. I invite you to subscribe to my channel and to read the books that are in the description. See you again.